I'm curious on what your experience is now that I think I want to use my quotes, my air quotes on that we're ending the pandemic. What has it been like for you for commercial real estate?
Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond Podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day.
It looked so good. I mean, it was like when you started with just residential houses, single family houses, and you just look at them and you think, oh my gosh, the numbers look so great. But then what if you can't get a tenant, or you get a tenant who doesn't pay and then there's an eviction moratorium? And then you can't, you just can't get the thing, and you can't, not only do you not get your profits, not only do you not get the benefits and all the things you thought you were going to get, but the other thing that I find that happens so often is then people get, as you talked about earlier, become the tired landlord. You become, worn out and just not interested in going in that direction. And it's not because real estate is not a great vehicle for wealth, because it is. It just, you need to understand.
It is absolutely a fantastic vehicle for wealth. And just that's going to be who's going to be selling in a couple of months is the tired landlords. And man, there are going to be some deals out there, because when people don't want it, they really don't want it. They just want it lifted off their hands. And that's your ideal seller, where they're basically just saying, here, just take it, please.
Yeah.
Just don't, just get it off my hands. That's the seller you want.
So now I'm curious on if you look in your crystal ball, what do you think 2 years looks like? And what do you think 5 years looks like from after this, all the eviction moratoriums, after the mortgage, what was that called? The forgiveness, all of these things that have allowed. I'm curious, 2 years from now, November, 2 years from now, so that'd be 23. And then 5 years from now, what do you think it's going to look like?
I think in 23, I think 2 years from now, we'll still be in the properties trading hands, still foreclosures going on. I think the common person won't think that real estate's a good idea. I think they'll have friends and acquaintances that have been foreclosed on, like, oh, that's a terrible idea. And that is exactly the time to buy. It's the equivalent of, like, I was buying in Las Vegas in 2010 and 2011. I was buying rental properties that rent for $1,300 a month. I was buying them for $70,000. All inclusive, like including all the fix-up needed. And, these are properties that have been $275,000, but no, there was no one in the market. I could go and look at 20 houses in a day and buy 7 good ones. So that's what I used to do. And, if you fast forwarded a couple of years after that, like you're 5 years out, the market was in strong recovery. The places that I bought for 70 and 80 were now like 225, headed to 275. And now, of course, much higher than that. But so I think in 5 years, you're talking about a strong recovery, and the people that have got in the years between now and then make out like bandits.
Yeah.
One way to think about real estate, this is an interesting way to think about it, but it's a sensible one. Some people think of it as tenants pay your mortgage while you're waiting for the property to appreciate, and that your real profit comes out on the appreciation. It's not really on the cash flow. And I actually think that's a good way to think about it. I think that in real estate, the cash flow is never going to be the thing that really, like, you retire on and you're flying around the private jet kind of thing. But when you buy properties where, the market just in and of itself causes increases in value, that's when you really make great money. And that's why you buy in good sections that people want to live in. I bought in Las Vegas in 2010 because I looked at it and I said, there's so much business investment here with the casinos and these big players. It's a city built for growth, business friendly. I said, this is a great place to be. I don't care what people say about the market. I dove in there and was buying like crazy. And I was making money. I was making net about $300 a month per unit, which is great. But again, $300 per month is $3,600 per year. That's not the kind of thing that, you write home about. Even when, you have 10 of them, it's $36,000 a year. It's not really great. But when you get your places that go from 70 to 225 in 4 years and you sell them and you have dozens of them, that's when you really make your money. And that's what's coming up again. We're getting that same cycle is mounting up. So you have to have conviction, and you have to say, I'm going to like, even though my friends will say, oh my gosh, you're buying real estate? That's crazy. When they're saying that is exactly when you should be buying. And, I just suggest look at your friends and say, is that a financial genius or not? If it's a financial genius, then listen to them. But for most people, yeah, it's the guy that's in the cul-de-sac. You're talking to them on Super Bowl Sunday or on Sunday games. Doesn't have experience in business or real estate. That's not the person to listen to because they have so much certainty, but they know nothing. So just listen to the people that actually know what they're doing.
And I agree with you 100%. The only disagreement I would say is I think the cash flow and the tax benefits, because I've learned so much with the multifamily, the cash flow and the tax benefits with multifamily, again, if you go bigger, not if you get 6 units. It has
going
to
bigger is different. That is a different. And there absolutely you can get great cash flow. I was thinking more of your single family rental where you're sort of doing home-based landlording.
Yeah.
Where you're the one they call on a Saturday night.
Right.
But if you talk about those 1, 2, 3, 400 unit projects, that's different. Those things, I agree with you. The cash flow can be fantastic. The leverage on your time can be great because you're not spending a lot of time on it. And most importantly, you don't get those late night calls. And they also have enough, volume that if someone leaves, it doesn't mean you have no income. It means that, if it's 100, it means you have 1/100th less income if someone leaves. So not really a big deal one way or the other. So I think those are proper cash flow properties for sure. And there you can always, a lot of landlords that I know will get those buildings, they go up in value and they don't sell them. They just take a loan out against them, which is tax-free money. And that's a little controversial right now where you get people like Mark Zuckerberg and really wealthy people who actually don't really take any salary and don't end up paying any taxes. You say, well, how does this guy make a couple $1 billion a year and pay no taxes? The answer is that they just take loans against their stock portfolio, and loans are not taxable. And then they pay the taxes, or they sometimes only repay the loans and just keep refinancing them out of their assets, and they never pay any taxes ever. Yeah. And you could do the same thing. Maybe I don't feel like I'm going to be the founder of the next Facebook. I don't think that's my thing. But what I can do is buy, big apartment buildings. And again, to do this, it's a matter of just educating yourself. Just look for a reputable educator, go start to learn, and then learn before you move. But yes, you can actually make money and pay no taxes at all. And you're right, Jennifer, the depreciation, even for a regular landlord, is just such a gift. Yeah. And depreciation, for the translation for folks out here, the government pretends that you lost money on your property every year. Even though you may have made cash. And unless you sell, you don't pay any of that back. So it's pretty good. And if you die, you pay none of it back, and neither do your heirs.
I was going to say that, the tax benefits. I know you're an attorney and I'm a licensed real estate agent. We're not tax experts, but I can tell you the tax benefits, I know because of what I've enjoyed, they are amazing. And as you said, find an educator who can help you with multifamily. Find a tax specialist who can help you understand it. But I love the way you just put it in very plain terms. So, yes, tax benefits.
It's a good gig. It's a good gig. And, you can get in on the tax theories of the rich and famous. And it's as simple as buying and holding real estate, which is another difference between fix and flip and rentals. Because fix and flip is regular taxation. You just taxed at regular rates. Whatever 38% or whatever rate your particular federal rate is, but certainly in the 30s. And then if you have state tax, you pay that on top of it. So, that's a big hit on your profits. If you're going to give away 30 to 40% of your profits just based on that, that's a big hit. So the smart game is in the rentals. And the smart game is scale it up so that you don't have to take the call at midnight. And the root of that, just to lay it plain, the root to that is get educated. And you'll see what's possible, and it'll knock your socks off what's actually possible. Even for a regular person, owning 100, 200, 300 units may seem overwhelming, but when you have a system and you have a process, it's actually not.
I was going to say, those are key, a system, a process, and a team, right?
Yes, a good team. And the things, when you have bigger units, there are teams available that are literally turnkey, professional property managers that have plumbers, have electricians, have relationships, have supplies in a warehouse, and they have accounting teams do the accounting. They're out there, but they're looking for the person that owns a 100-unit building. That's why you want to head in that direction.
Yeah, I think that you're so right. And I love that you put it like in that very simple way of knowing that number one, you just need to be educated. Number two, you need a really good system and you need a really good team. And with those things, and again, you need the education. You have to really understand it before you go ahead and put your money into it. Because if you don't understand it, it can again, how do we end up with so many tired landlords and people who give up on real estate investing? Is because they didn't find out all the information they needed, including, I hate to say, worst case scenarios. And I know you've got some good stories. You always have some great stories. Can you share a story of a worst case scenario as far as getting into real estate investing?
I mean, I would say my latest worst case scenario, it just, well, I'll give you two of them. So I'll give you a new one, which is actually a
Okay.
different one. So early in my career, I bought some crappy, terrible C-class buildings, and these are just single families, and they looked great on paper. I was at a tax sale and I bought a place for like $2,000. It was great,
Wow. Yeah.
and it was a house, and not a nice little neighborhood, but it was a $70,000 house, and looked pretty nice from the outside. And so I knocked on the door and talked to the occupant, and she was a tenant. And I noticed while I was there, I was getting a little itchy. And so my first problem with the building is it's absolutely full of fleas. I mean, I just never got bitten by more fleas in my life. And so
Oh,
this woman was, really just desperate. She had no money. She wasn't paying any rent, and she wanted to stay there. So I said, well, look, you got to get yourself together here because I can't be your free landlord. So she, of course, didn't pay. So I go down to the local district justice, which is the eviction court. And she then pulls out the thing. She says, I'm pregnant. And so literally the district justice says, well, I guess you'll have to stay there. And he let her stay there for free until 3 months after she gave birth, she was only 3 months pregnant when I ran into this situation. I'm like, I didn't know that because my tenant was pregnant, I became the free landlord. I don't want to sound mean, but honestly, it was crazy. But it was an elected district justice, and he just didn't care. So I was stuck with that. Finally, when she moved out, her boyfriend or whoever it was just did tremendous amount of damage to the property.
mm,
Tore up the toilets, holes through the walls, just left the sinks overflowing, so damaged the floors with that, and just clogged up the sinks and left the water running. Um, and so I had literally like $30,000 worth of damage to the property, and that was a lot of that was covered by insurance, but still, by the time I got out of this deal, it was like 2 years later, and it just I made a little bit of money, but it wasn't worthwhile. And so that was that. And that was a horror show. And that was one of the times that I learned just stay out of the really, really low end neighborhoods because it's just not fruitful. And I had another place that I bought, also a tax sale. And that place, I I went down there to go look at the property, and there were just groups of guys standing on all the corners doing nothing. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. And so I get out of my car, and literally three of them started running towards my car. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I got to get out of here. So I hopped back in the car, started and ran off. And I was like, this is not the place to be. So I headed out. So those are the horror stories, but also, plenty of successes. I had places that, like, I'll give you an example of success in the B class neighborhood. I bought an apartment building in University City of Philadelphia, which is sort of metro to University of Pennsylvania. And, this is good, solid B class housing. It is a rental property, so it's priced that way. And it was priced at, what did I buy it for? I bought it for 50,000 unit. It was 12 units, so it's like $600,000 purchase price. I then just converted to condos, which is kind of something you do on paper, just with zoning, and sold everything for 2.5 million because I sold each unit individually,
wow.
and that was a win.
Yeah.
That was my B class, B class property. I just cleaned them up. I didn't do a lot to them, made them look pretty and clean, but that was about it, and sold them. And that's an example. If you get into the B class, and there's a lot of things you can do. You can do condo conversions, you can do rentals, and you get good tenants who will pay the rent. And that's the important thing. So it's not all bad. I don't want to make horror stories
Right.
scary.
Yeah. Well, and I always want to do the horror stories just so that you again, people get so excited, and then I realize, oh my gosh, again, people don't talk about the bad stuff. I want to talk about the bad stuff as well. Although, I'm always looking for the silver lining. And I love that you talked about condo conversions, because that would probably be, if I had a little crystal ball, that would be one of my crystal ball predictions, is that we're going to see a years, and I don't know if it'll be 2 years or 5 years, of just people renting and renting and renting until they get through whatever the repercussions are of the pandemic, of not paying rent, of not paying mortgages, of the eviction moratoriums, of all this that has kind of been the last 2 years. I think that we're going to see a lot of people rent as they reevaluate their jobs, their lifestyles. I think so many people are just reinventing themselves now and choosing a different lifestyle, a different job, a different educational, system. And just so many things are changing. So I think a lot of people will rent because they don't want to be tied down to something right away. But then I think the next prediction is condo conversion of those apartment buildings, because like right now in DC, you're seeing it everywhere. It's rental building, rental building, rental building. It's not condos, because condos are not very popular right now. And I don't know when they're going to be super popular again. But I do think that condo conversions are going to be a huge, huge opportunity for people who own multifamily rental unit buildings.
I agree with you. I think that's a great cash out strategy. And I think what we're seeing, Jennifer, is that typically condos are the first to suffer in a market that's starting to downturn. And so I think you're seeing that. And when the market's really high, they go really high, because, when houses all of a sudden are 30% more expensive, all of a sudden the condo looks like a relative bargain, and that's where it goes up in value. And so I would think it's sort of, what do they call it? The canary in the coal mine.
Right. Right.
So that's the condos right now. And later on, it'll be a terrific way to exit if you're going to have a big apartment building. It's a great way to exit, because, your values on a rental are just what's called cap rate, which is just essentially the interest rate that's represented by the cash flow. So if you had $1 million investment and you're making $50,000 a year, that's 5% profit. And that's about what buildings trade at, about 5%, sometimes less. But when you sell things as a place to live, the metric is not your rental cash flow capitalization. Your metric is, what does it cost to find other places to live?
Right.
And you can really, you're right, you can knock it out of the park with that. I think you're correct that people that get into those buildings now will be really, really happy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Think about the tired landlords we're going to have, and people that hit foreclosure. That's going to be an opportunity for you to buy. And where you have to be brave, you have to be like the fireman or the firewoman. You have to go into the burning building. That's what you have to do. So when everybody else is saying the market is no good and the real estate, it's so frightening, that's exactly the time to be looking for high quality, well-positioned real estate that you can rent well. It's exactly when to do it. And it just takes some, intestinal fortitude, shall we say, to do that.
Oh yeah. And like I said, I think that you should always look at the real estate and see how many different ways it can be flexible, almost like a gymnast. How many different ways could this go right? How many different ways could this go wrong? And that's why, like you said, B-class property, I think, is really an important part that limits the amount of ways that it can go wrong, but increases the ways it can go right. And I think that that's really critical when you're making a decision on which direction you want to go.
That's a great point. That is a really great point of B-class. Yeah, you have more exit strategies. You can rent it. It'll stay rented with good tenants, or you can sell it when the market's right. And, part of the key with any investing is do the right thing at the right time. And what most people do that don't do well is they see the market going up, 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 whatever market you're talking about, equities or real estate, see it going up, and they buy like here when it's already inflected. And everything is cyclical, and it's going to come here and then go back down. So people buy here, they're excited, things are still going up, then it peaks, they're like, oh, what's going on here? Then all of a sudden it starts on the downside. And then they get to around here like, oh, this is a terrible investment. This isn't going good. So they bought here and they sell here. And then the same thing happens again. They start the cycle over again. And that's how you end up not making money. So you have to have conviction. Then you have to really feel, after study and after getting educated, that this is really good, and you have to stick with it. Yeah. You can't be, toe dipper, because the toe dippers lose their shirts. The people with conviction make a fortune. Yeah. That's often the difference between the two. Just have your conviction.
And I would emphasize with what you just said, it's also the daily conviction, or if you want to say the daily disciplines, because so often you you put it off, whatever it is with your real estate investing, taking care of it, making sure this or that, making sure you're a good A team that is doing everything you need. I call it your yay team. Everyone should help you go, yay. I think it's so important in all of that. But if you don't, then you're letting yourself be vulnerable.
Yes. And A team is also a big deal. I mean, you can't charge into the fray on a goat. You want to be on your charger. I haven't seen any knights charging them with goats, but
right, exactly.
And bad employees are goats. Just maybe goats are nice. I shouldn't say it. That's probably
there's a random side street. I have a friend of mine who tells me he goes and he spends time with goats in the Philadelphia area because, again, and I think a lot of people, like I said, are just changing their lifestyle. He said that he loves goats now. He said he used to always think they were just a mean animal, and yet now that he spent time with goats, he would say that goats are nice. But I think your point of you just need to really make sure that your team is an A team, that it is helping you say yay every day. It's not a team that, again, I hate to say, one of the things that's going to be really interested as time, I'm going to be so interested to see how many people are working from home if production of what they were supposed to be doing is still getting done to the same level, or if at home they start to, do something else and not do
Facebook like this.
Yeah. Exactly. They're doing something other than what they're supposed to do. Well, I want to go ahead and make sure. So I want to see John Lee's I know in the room. John always has great questions. And John's been in real estate investing for quite a while. So John, if you're there, if you want to open up your mic and ask any questions for Bob Diamond.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Bob. Some great stuff here. I just had you just kind of spurred some thoughts I had before. One of the things that's a little different this time than some of the other, I call them ice ages, when we have major adjustments, but because people are working home, some of the rural areas have gotten, the values have gone up, which we would never really had that this much before. And something I've looked at for many years is some of the smaller towns. There's a lot of empty commercial properties, town squares, and things like that. I've always thought that maybe that might be a way to convert some of those things into condos. What are your thoughts on those, Bob?
Those work. I think small town living is really appealing for a lot of people. The other thing we didn't talk about that's happening is just the social unrest and uncertainty. And that's an ugly topic, but we've all seen it. I mean, it's just, you see some of the microphones saying this is mostly peaceful protest, and there's a building burning behind them. There's a lot of anger and resentment, and a lot of it's being stoked up, and it's not good. So I think the small town living is going to be really appealing to people, and I think you probably can make conversions work in those old downtowns. And what I would look for though is I would look for signs of renewal, where you're seeing stores opening up, you're seeing coffee shops, you're seeing signs of life. I wouldn't go into the dead zone because you don't know if it's actually going to come back. I don't think you need to be in the very beginning of things. I think if you look at like a curve like this, you want to be when it's here, where there's solid signs of progress, things getting cleaned up, street lighting that's working and it's being installed, interest in the government to make that area regentrified or revitalized again. And I think when you see that, get in here. That's where you want to get in. Don't go into the total dead zone. And I think, other than that, I think it's a great idea. I think those are pretty simple renovations. When you're renovating just the inside of the building, it's much simpler than the whole outside. And I think there's room for that. And you have a lot of people also who are educated people that aren't making that much money right now. They're the sort of prototypical barista at Starbucks with a degree in history from a college. And they'll do okay over time. You may laugh at them now, but they're young, trying to find their feet, and they will. They're smart and industrious, and you'll see them doing things over time, just maybe not right at the beginning. And I think they could be good tenants. They may live in a group situation where they're living with a couple friends. They'll get the rent paid, and they'll be fine. So I think that's a really good insight, John. It's smart.
Any other questions, John, before we go?
No, thank you very much. Some great stuff. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So, we started early, and I want to go ahead and keep us to an hour. So, Bob, I definitely want to come back, because one of the other topics I really want to talk about, I would love to have you back in December, is to talk about the overages business. So I want to leave that as a teaser. But if you would just say a few, I would say a few things that people, why would you want to learn about overages?
Well, overages is a really timely cash business. So overages, just to put it simply, when a property is foreclosed upon, either because someone didn't pay the mortgage or they didn't pay the real estate taxes, when the property sells for more than the amount that's due, meaning more than the tax bill or the mortgage, then that extra money goes back to the former owner. And it's a business that's normally really great, but in a time when there are a lot of foreclosures, it becomes stellar. And we've also had increase in value in properties of, when I read the Federal Reserve's numbers, $52,000 per housing unit on average. And when that happens, when houses go up in value, they sell for a lot more at the foreclosure auctions. Usually foreclosure auctions, they're somewhere around 75% of retail is what they go for. So when the retail price goes up, the overage goes up. And so what we do is we reach out to the people, tell them, hey, we could help you get some money back for a percentage. And we go and get the money for a percentage. And typical deal, $30,000 to $40,000 is what we're recovering. And typically we're taking about a third of that. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but about a third. So each deal you figure is about a $10,000 deal, is a good safe number. And probably 8 or 10 hours worth of work in total. So easy, clean work, no renovations, just a flat out cash business. I like it for what we're going into. Also, we have some uncertainty. I think foreclosures are certain, but we have certain uncertainty in other things. This is a home-based business. I do it from here in Puerto Rico. I have staff all over the United States, from California to Florida to Pennsylvania and everywhere in between. And it's really a great business, and it doesn't take much money. You're not buying the claims, so you're not putting out a lot of money, but you can make a lot of money. So I like it where you don't have to put out money, but you make money. And the other thing that's really great, at least for me personally, is you're really helping people that desperately need it, because these people will not know about the money. They're not going to get the money back without you, because they literally won't even know about it. And the thought for them of having lost their house and then fighting with the government to get their money back, probably not something they're going to tackle. But yeah. You can. And
so I was going to say, in December, I want to go through the whole thing so that we can explain it in more detail. And I think the thing that I wanted to make sure we left people with is the fact that this is an amazing home-based business they can do anywhere in the world, and that can also not only make a great income, but you can really help other people.
Yes. I mean, the people that we help are really hurting. They've been kicked hard. They've lost probably their house to foreclosure. It's not usually a rental property. It's usually their house. And they, when they get, $20,000 or more from us, from the work we do, it's life-changing. Yep. We've literally had homeless people get housing again. So it's a great business, and it's a great business for good-hearted people. If you really want a business where you can help people and make a lot of money, you're a perfect candidate for the overages business.
Oh, and I love it. So we'll talk about that next time you're on. And again, I thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and end off our recording and our YouTube and the Clubhouse room. So we're going to exit that. So the last thing that I do every time when I end a show now, I ask you to lift your voice and say yay with me before I end. So John, if you'll say a yay with us, and then Bob, let's all say yay together. So 3, 2, 1.
Yay!
Thank you. And John, thanks for being here today.
Hi, I'm Jack Canfield. You may know me as the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And if you want more help in getting from where you are to where you want to be, I want to encourage you to listen to the Jennifer Hammond Show